This story was submitted by a man from northern Idaho. He says it's the reason he never camps alone anymore, and why he still sleeps with a light on. I've always been comfortable in the woods. I grew up hunting, fishing, and camping with my dad. But in 2018, something happened that changed the way I look at the forest forever. I was on a solo camping trip in the Idaho Panhandle National Forest. It was early October, cold, quiet, and empty. I picked a spot near a creek far from any trails. I wanted isolation. I wanted silence. I got both, but not the way I expected. The first night was peaceful. I cooked dinner, listened to the creek, and fell asleep to the sound of wind in the trees. Around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Not to a noise, not to a dream, just awake. The forest was dead silent. No wind, no water, no insects. Then I heard it, a slow, heavy exhale. Not mine, not an animal. It came from right outside my tent. I froze. My heart hammered so loud I thought whatever was out there could hear it. I listened again. Another exhale. Long, slow, like someone trying to breathe quietly. I didn't move until sunrise. When I finally stepped outside, the ground was covered in frost. And there, circling my tent, were footprints. Bare footprints. Human. Large. And deep. Like whoever made them was heavy. They circled my tent 7 times. I tried to convince myself it was a prank, but there were no other campsites for miles, and the prints came from the tree line and returned to it. No trail, no path, just straight from the woods, straight to me. I should have left, but I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. That night I built a bigger fire and stayed awake as long as I could. Around midnight, I heard something moving in the woods, not walking, not running, crawling. The sound circled my campsite, slow and deliberate. Leaves rustled, branches snapped softly. Whatever it was, it stayed low to the ground. Then it stopped behind my tent. I held my breath. A whisper drifted through the fabric. "Are you awake?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The whisper came again, closer this time. "I watched you sleep." I grabbed my knife and flashlight, but I couldn't bring myself to unzip the tent. I sat there until dawn, shaking. When the sun rose, I stepped outside. The footprints were back, but this time they weren't circling. They led from the tree line to the back of my tent and stopped inches from where my head had been. But here's the part that still haunts me. There were handprints too, large ones, pressed into the frost, as if someone had been lying on their stomach, watching me through the fabric. I packed up and left without eating, without drinking, without looking back. A ranger later told me that people sometimes report someone watching them in that area, but no one's ever caught anything. No one's ever seen a face. I don't know what was out there, but I know this. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a person. And it wanted me to know it was there. I haven't camped alone since. Tonight's story comes from a camper who swore they would never return to the woods again. They went alone, deep into the mountains, expecting peace. But what they found was something that watches, something that follows, and something that learns your voice. This is their story. I arrived at the campsite just before sunset. No other tents, no cars, no hikers, just the sound of wind brushing through the tall pines. I set up my tent, lit a small fire, and cooked dinner. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. But as the sun dipped behind the ridge, the forest changed. The air grew still, too still. It was the kind of silence that makes your skin tighten, like the woods were holding their breath. Around 9 p.m. I heard it, crunch, a single heavy footstep in the darkness behind my tent. I froze. Another step, slow, deliberate. Not an animal, too heavy, too controlled. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the trees. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched wrapped around me like cold fingers. I told myself it was just nerves, just the forest settling. But deep down, I knew better. Around midnight, I crawled into my tent and tried to sleep. That's when I heard it. A voice. My voice. from outside the tent. It whispered my name, perfectly mimicked, like a recording of myself played back through the trees. Daniel. I sat up, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The voice came again, closer this time. Daniel, come out. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened as the thing walked slowly around my tent, dragging something across the ground. I finally gathered the courage to peek through the zipper, just a tiny opening, and I saw it. A tall, thin silhouette standing between the trees. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was studying me. Then it spoke again, in my voice. Daniel, I'm cold. Let me in. I shut the zipper and held it closed with both hands, even though I knew that zipper wouldn't stop anything. The footsteps circled my tent again. Slow, scraping, waiting. Around 3 a.m. the scratching started. Long, slow drags of claws across the fabric of my tent. Not tearing, just tracing the outline of my body as I sat frozen inside. Then it pressed its hand, or whatever it had, against the tent wall. I could see the shape of its fingers. Too many fingers. It whispered again, but this time, it wasn't my voice. It was deeper, hungrier. Let me see your face. I didn't respond. I didn't dare. Just before dawn, the scratching stopped. The footsteps faded. The forest exhaled again. I waited until the first light hit the trees, then burst out of the tent and ran. I didn't pack. I didn't look back. But halfway down the trail, I heard it one last time, faint, echoing through the woods. Daniel. My voice, perfectly copied. The camper never returned to that forest, and whatever was out there, it learned their voice in one night. If you ever camp alone and you hear yourself calling your own name from the darkness, don't answer.